Ladies and gentlemen, this is Project StarCraft, casting a game obtained from Reddit's subreddit called Cast It. We're coming to you from Cloud Kingdom, and we have a Protoss versus Protoss for you this evening. Spawning in the bottom left-hand corner on Cloud Kingdom, we have our red Protoss, who's something's kind of sneaky. We'll see about that in a second. We have exioNBeST. Spawning in the blue trunks in the top right, we have, similarly named, we have Aquadre. So, Cloud Kingdom's a 1v1 map. You've got people in the top right, you got your opponent in the bottom left. We see a really sneaky pylon come from exioNBeST, likely a cannon rush, or maybe some really cheeky shenanigans with proxy pylons. There's quite a bit of a rush distance, and the rush distance isn't optimal. You're going to go through quite a different nooks and crannies here to your opponent's base. But the map does kind of support normally macro play, but let's see what exioNBeST decides to do with his first 150 minerals. Throws down a gateway? Interesting. I loaded this game up and I thought it was going to be a cannon rush. So let's see how Aquadre decides to respond to it. Throw down a 13 gateway on his own. Pretty much an economical build in terms of Protoss openings. exioNBeST sneaking in. With that kind of scouting timing, even with the early stuff right there, I would even think that would be a 9 pylon scout. So, exioNBeST also sending another probe out to add some more stuff to the pylon field that we have set up over here. Also adding a forge. Cheeky bastard wanting to end the game, trying to end the game quickly. exioNBeST getting a probe in here. And Aquadre is able to easily see it, only not being able to see very few of the outside right here. If we go to Aquadre's view, he can definitely see that something's kind of fishy. Scouting the rest of the map inside exioNBeST base, but not able to do much with it. exioNBeST being annoying, attacking the pylon, and Aquadre know that something's a little bit up, so he decides to add an additional gateway before teching and pulling all guys off gas except for one, so he's slowly pulling up, and he knows that he needs to do something quickly, otherwise he's going to be in a little bit of trouble. We see some zealots being chrono boosted out by exioNBeST, and we see exioNBeST's first zealot coming in. Aquadre gets the first hit on the zealot, so even with that, it would be a good exchange favoring Aquadre. Decides that the zealots are trading some blows. We actually have a pylon warping in. Actually, on the low ground covering and high ground from exioNBeST. Let's see how Aquadre decides to pull it. Actually pulling some probes to be able to tank some damage from the zealot. And Aquadre has 2 zealots in the actual full health, but exioNBeST only having 1 zealot's about half health with another one that's at full health. So Aquadre doing a good job of being able to hold off any kind of shenanigans. But exioNBeST was successful in actually adding some additional pylons up on the high ground with some additional cannons. So does Aquadre know about this? As I clicked the wrong fucking button. Does Aquadre know about this? Oh yeah, he's definitely got that in view. exioNBeST doing a little bit of micro to be able to do some pot damage, but barely taking any whole damage. But Aquadre knows he's got to get in there and do some sort of damage, taking out the probe, so no further additional cans can be warped in, which is good. But exioNBeST being smart actually brings an additional probe. exioNBeST at about 16 food, and Aquadre trying to chase down that probe. Additional micro, additional battles going on over here. Some additional zealots being built, but just an additional pylon being done. The 2 cans are actually placed down now, and another pylon adding for redundancy, taking some hull damage on the pylon and the assimilator that are placed over here. So Aquadre's deciding to not forsake this base, but it looks like he's holding his own. There's not an additional probe in sight, so we just see these 2 cannons from exioNBeST doing some damage and actually completely stopping mining from Aquadre. However, Aquadre does have about 176 gas in the bank, so he could definitely get some stalkers out and get Workgate up and running. Now Aquadre being cheeky on his own, actually has a proxy pylon on his opponent's base. Let's see what happens. And Aquadre trying to do an expand, gets shut down with another zealot that's being sent in by exioNBeST. Really weird, really crazy game going on right now, guys. exioNBeST adding an additional cannon, and decides that canceling that was worth it. Being able to take out a zealot and actually being able to replace that cannon. So exioNBeST being an annoying butthole, but as we see, we have Warp Gate starting. We also have some Stalkers being warped in, so the Stalkers will be able to lock down any probes, will be able to take a little bit of damage from the cannons. And we see a Zealot walking in trying to get some pot shots. We look at the unit counting station. They're even on workers, which is scary! Doing some additional micro, and exioNBeST actually has cans that are hitting the mineral line of Aquadre. And adding a lot more additional pylons and additional gateways to be able to add any kind of redundancy. Aquadre trying to focus fire the pylon to be able to cut down any kind of redundancy, but we've got 2 extra pylons being warped in, so that cannon will be powered momentarily. We do have Aquadre being able to officially secure that expansion. There was a game on, I think it wasn't NLG, it was Day 9's Red Bull Land, where I think Hasuops got cannon rushed by Naniwa. I think it was Naniwa. And Hasuops had the perfect response. Just expanded behind it, took out the probes. He lost the base, but he was able to properly respond to it. Aquadre being able to lock down the additional probes, so Aquadre knows that he's pretty much lost this base. Now we see a forge being built by Aquadre. I missed that since I had the units tab up. But he's got a forge of his own. I wonder if we're going to see a counter cannon rush. It looks like that exioNBeST actually completely walling off, but he doesn't know that's there. What an interesting and crazy game this has been. So the cannon rush has been moderately thwarted. exioNBeST just having a probe up here. But Aquadre's tech is still intact. As long as he can take out this probe, which he does, none of this is going to get taken out. So he can still hold his tech. He's got Warp Gate done. He's actually warping in a Zealot here. And one cannon actually locked down a lock-in right there. I'm not sure if exioNBeST got whiff of that. So, actually canceling that additional wall and just favoring for some additional pylons able to get into the actual base. And Aquadre, it looks like he's cannoning it back, and uh-oh, exioNBeST just got whiff of what's happening. And exioNBeST doing everything he possibly can to buy some time, pulling every single probe. And some Zealots being warped in, doing some really cute micro. Aquadre needs to lock this guy down if he's going to do anything, but we got some Zealot taking about 3 kills. Some really cute micro coming from exioNBeST to be able to completely lock this down. But what he realizes is that the probe's still there, and there's pylons powering any kind of redundancy, so or any kind of power. So Zealots can be warped in, some additional stuff can be warped in, really locking down and really negating exioNBeST from being able to do a whole lot. So we see some Zealots being warped in. Aquadre really doesn't have enough gas quite yet. These Zealots are going to be able to poke around the base and at least prevent exioNBeST from being really too comfortable. There's a free pylon going down for Aquadre. Back at home, we still see 22 probes to 17, but Aquadre's got an army, as exioNBeST doesn't. And Aquadre, with a little bit of missed micro, actually loses that Zealot, but that pylon won't stay alive that much longer. Whenever Aquadre can be able to warp some stuff in, Aquadre adding an additional gateway, and he still has his tech up here. Imagine that. So we actually see Exion doing, utilizing his probes as an army advantage. And it looks like that probe may go down if it gets too close. Oh no! So the cannon rush has been thwarted, but there's 2 pylons actually in exion's base, so a couple Stalkers being warped in. It's going to be good night for exioNBeST. But Aquadre's got a good army at home. He's actually got a base. So it goes to show, I wouldn't say that you're out if you get cannon rush. Just do your best to, expand and waste as much mineral and buy as much time. So we see some Stalkers and the Zealot being warped in. We see some micro going down. These probes are not going to last very long. And they're actually being pulled off of mining completely, as these Zealots and Stalkers from Aquadre are actually doing a lot of damage. Zealot actually being feedly microed. Another Zealot going in, actually trying to do what it can for the cannon, but these guys are actually locking down gas mining. Some additional Stalkers being warped in. About 5 being warped in for Aquadre, actually ahead of exioNBeST's 2 Stalkers and a Sentry, and we see all the probes being pulled. The Stalkers have to pull back. A force field being placed down. Actually, that wasn't a favorable force field because we got some additional Stalkers being back here that aren't taking a whole lot of damage. These 2 Stalkers are just now starting to take some additional damage. Some Zealots being warped in, and that'll actually reflect that. And interesting game. 2 Sentries being warped in for exioNBeST because that's really all he can afford. So we got 2 Stalkers and 2 Sentries versus 3 Zealots and 2 Stalkers. So some really cute play going on back and forth now. While Aquadre is actually macroing at home, building probes behind this. So we see a robotics facility being put down. I wonder what that was going to be intended for, because he's only... It's 15 minutes in the game, and he's at like 25, 27 food. I mean, come on. So Aquadre actually folks firing down that assimilator, cutting down exioNBeST potential gas by half. Some force fields getting down, actually cutting off a Zealot. exioNBeST warping in a Zealot of his own, actually trying to take out the first pylon that Aquadre has, and that'll actually... Oh, with one more hit, that actually get really close to a supply block in Aquadre, and it actually does, bringing him to 57 out of 58 supply. And there's really not a good response. Quickly, we look back at the base. We see an additional gateway and some pylons being built in. But once that pylon goes down, Aquadre cannot be able to apply any kind of pressure. But essentially, he's limited exioNBeST from being able to do what he can. He's got some additional cannons over here that really aren't providing too much to the battle. But again, Aquadre can only really do cute stuff around the edge of the bases. Really can't even get about right here. So now exioNBeST actually chrono boosting out an Immortal, and that'll actually do pretty good damage with the army that exioNBeST has. But I mean, that's the thing about Aquadre. Like, everything he warps in here is all in. Like, these guys are going to win. I mean, if anything, he should have brought the army that was close by, and it looks like he actually is getting some stuff on the low ground. Force fielding, preventing the Stalkers from being able to have any kind of maneuverability, and the Zealots from Aquadre are actually trying to get into the fight, actually being able to reflect and sandwiching some Zealots that are actually right here. Aquadre looks like he's going for the bust, or wanting to. Actually chrono boosting out another Immortal as Aquadre is warping in some more Stalkers. Interesting 20-minute game, and this stuff still hasn't been scouted by Aquadre, so... I mean, he knows he saw the Immortal, but he doesn't really know the tech. I mean, half his army's down in the low ground, half his army's down in the high ground, so... It's very hard to be able to get to do anything other than locking that down. A force field actually preventing a Zealot from being able to fully escape. And he actually pulls back. So if we go to the army tab real quick, while we have a small delay, Aquadre does have a favor of the army supply, but you kind of have to realize that there's quite a few cannons in the mix as well. Aquadre trying to shut down the gas mining completely from exioNBeST. These Mortals are doing pretty good. Actually focus firing down the Forge and deciding that now's the time to push. Actually, these Immortals are actually mopping up and doing quite a bit. The Mortals actually cut back just a little bit. There's only 3 Stalkers left on the high ground. Some additional Stalkers and Sentries being warped in. Aquadre decides that now's the time to bust. Actually, he doesn't decide to bust. Forge field the ramp, trapping some Zealots that will never see the light of day. Actually, is that Zealot going to be able to get away? Why does Zealot go home? And we're still in this game, so if we go to the tech path, it looks like exioNBeST is actually a little bit higher because he's got that Immortal. And it looks like he's chrono boosting out an additional one. So if we look at the army supply, Aquadre is actually in trouble. So while we have a lull, Aquadre back up to 22 workers. exioNBeST still at a paltry 18. But we see a push coming from exioNBeST with 3 Immortals. We'll go to the production tab. Looks like he's adding an additional gateway. He's got 1 probe for reinforcements, and we're trying to get a robotics facility warped in for Aquadre. I'm not sure if he's doing that for counter Immortals or if he's doing that for trying to get to Colossus. But if he tries to go for Colossus, I'm not sure he's going to have enough time for it. So we're 20 minutes into the game, and it's definitely been not your typical PvP. Reinforcement pylon going down for exioNBeST, actually working on the rocks to prevent lots of cute force field shenanigans. Now Aquadre's in a lot of trouble here. Mostly Stalker army coming against a Stalker Immortal army. And the Stalkers are just melting pretty quickly, going from green health to yellow to red within just a few moments. Some additional Stalkers being warped in to push it back slightly. The Immortals barely have even taken shield damage, and exioNBeST decides that now it's time to keep going. Some additional Zealots being worked in for Aquadre, and the Stalkers are just melting. Folk actually trying to focus fire an Immortal, and it starts to run, and Aquadre taps out with a well-played GG. So an interesting game for Aquadre and exioNBeST. I think Aquadre had pretty decent cannon rush defense. I mean, he still lost his base, but he was still in the game. But it was just that having that warping was just too all in, and he wasn't able to properly respond to it.